All right, welcome back to Microsoft Flight Simulator World Tour in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. We're trying something a little different this time. When I streamed the game, the sun looked like it was a nuclear bomb going off and you could barely see anything. Everything got washed out, so I'm hoping this picture looks better. We're also going to split, since I'm recording, we're going to split the flight up into 3 segments. Usually I do about 3 hours. And I can only record for an hour each time on PlayStation 5. So we're going to do 3 different segments. We're still going to listen to podcasts while we fly. Today, as I'm recording, is Saturday, December 27th, 2025. It's 11:41 a.m. Eastern Time. I've got it set to live time and weather. We're taking off from Nassau, Bahamas, where we landed last time, and we're going to just fly around the Caribbean. I've got multiplayer on now, so hopefully we're able to see other players as we're flying around, as my plane is off-roading right now. But we'll see how this goes. We'll interrupt the podcast we're listening to at about an hour in, and then do a second recording and then a third recording later, and I'll just post them through next week. The podcast we're going to listen to today is, since I've kind of gone through the Tony Kornheiser show from the week, we're actually going to listen to a podcast called The House of R. It's a podcast with Joanna Robinson and Mallory Rubin, and they are talking about Stranger Things, which season 5, episodes 5 through 7 just came out on Christmas Day. This podcast specifically is about episodes 5 and 6. They've got a separate podcast on episode 7, but we're going to start with the one on episodes 5 and 6 from season 5. So spoiler alert if you haven't watched Stranger Things yet, for all the 2 people that maybe stumble on this video. There will be spoilers for Stranger Things season 5. So let's get that started.
It's Mallory Rubin. Hey, Mal.
Joe, do you accept my unproposal?
Always. We're team as ever. We're here to talk about Stranger Things Season 5, Volume 2, Part 1, aka the 5th and 6th episodes of Season 5. Happy holidays!
That's right.
Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas. The solstice just happened when we're recording this. However you celebrate the holidays, we hope you're enjoying yourselves. We are here to talk about kidnapped children, seminal moments in relationships, dripping goo, anything else you want? A lot of goo. It's a very goopy time. I'm really excited, but we're going to do all of that after this. This episode of casting, we are recording this podcast a little bit in advance of the Stranger Things Volume 2 drop, a couple days in advance. We'll record our final Stranger Things Volume 2 episode after the episodes air. So if you have thoughts and feelings about what you see in Volume 2, you have a little window to email us, hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com, about what you think about these 3 episodes, and then we will record the second part of that, and that will drop. Are we thinking the Friday, the Saturday? What do you think after the holidays? Something like that.
We're recording on Friday.
Yeah.
But the Ringer team is trying to do a lot with, a limited holiday crew. So it might, in terms of just timing, it might be waiting for everyone on Saturday.
Right. But, let's give our producers a break and everyone else a break. And we were doing our best this holiday season. So we're doing that. Double Stranger Things this week for the holiday week. We'll be back at the end of the year to do Stranger Things finale episode. Yeah. We don't know exactly when we're doing that because we are fairly certain we're not getting a screener for that. So you have some patience with us as we drop our finale pod in and around New Year's. And also just wanted to flag that Mallory and I are over on the Prestige TV podcast feed talking about the Heated Rivalry finale. So there's a lot of Mallory Rubin and Joanna Robinson here at the end of all things at the end of the year. So spoiler warning.
Yes.
All of Stranger Things up through season 5, episode 6, right? So just 5 and 6. We've seen episode 7. We're not going to talk about it until our part 2 of this chunk of the pod. We're also, I think we should just save Theory Corner maybe for the next pod, because I don't think there's any point in us theorizing about an episode we've already seen, but we're not going to talk about, so don't worry about it. And then we do have like a very minor stage show script reader corner at the very end of this pod. We will let you know when that's coming, but just sort of like, once again, we're back in the cave system. There's some Stranger Things first shadow theatrical experience insight that might be helpful, but we'll put that behind a spoiler warning for you. Anything anything else I should say, sort of premise-wise, before we get into our opening snapshot, Mallory, a bit?
I don't think so. Just co-sign what you said. Send us your emails after you watch these 3 episodes, you know. Is the pod hitting your feed Saturday? Yeah, but we're recording like midday Friday Pacific time.
Yeah.
So get us your emails by midday Friday Pacific.
Abandon your family at Christmas to write us an email.
Exactly. I mean, it's a podcast family, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah. Very, 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 very true.
This episode is brought to you by Viore on all U.S. orders over 75.
Such a lengthy mention in the pod. Also sent some more photos of his Jansport from like places around the world that he had taken it, sort of like the Amelie Gnome. And then wanted to, without spoiling for you, he actually like put spoiler text over it in case you read the email, talk about a Buffy season 4 character and how it was like a comp to Dr. K. We're not going to talk about it, but I just say if you know, you know.
Interesting.
And I agree.
Interesting. Okay.
But that is for Mallory to discover in her own time. But I just want to say, and I agree. And if anyone else at home knows, they know probably which season 4 character we're talking about.
Is this a flattering, like, is this a positive comp? In either direction, in both directions, or?
I would say no.
Yeah, okay.
I would say no. not the top of anyone's ranking of favorite characters in the Buffy universe, I would say.
Got it. Okay.
But I could see the comp, and I think it's interesting. And then Ari wrote in to say, watching Holly's scenes in the Creel Mansion in the first few episodes of Stranger Things Season 5 got me thinking about a certain kind of sci-fi trope. From what I can tell, seems like it's called kind of awkwardly the, quote, Lotus Eater Machine. The narrative device where a character is placed inside an idyllic, dreamlike, or artificially constructed reality designed to soothe or satisfy them, but ultimately functions as containment. That's the end of Ari. Well, Ari wrote a much longer email about this, but I wanted to include this for a couple of reasons, and I think it's even more worth talking about perhaps in our next Stranger Things pod, or maybe even at the end of the finale, depending on what happens with the kids who are in the Creel Mansion right now. But the Lotus Eater Machine, I thought, you know, which probably Ari got from TV Tropes, I thought was fun to bring up because, of course, we're talking about the Odyssey, you know, so that's where this idea comes from. The Lotus Eaters is an Odyssey thing. The Lotus Eater Machine, I agree, is sort of like an interesting combination. But this is definitely an idea we've talked about. There's actually there's a Buffy episode that has something like this. I talk about it a lot when I talk about the movie Labyrinth. There's like a very interesting part of the movie Labyrinth where this happens, where someone is sort of try to lull you into a false, to stay asleep.
Right.
And don't fight what's happening to you. Right. Forget about your quest and your journey and just stay here. It's comfortable here. So I know we've talked we talked about it during Percy Jackson season 1. Yeah. So this is an interesting trope. Ari mentioned that he went back, Ari mentioned that they went back and listened to our Portal Worlds tropes episode, and was like, you didn't talk about it then, but we have talked about it before. I don't think we've ever used this like name for it though, so I like learning this term, and definitely it'll come back up again. Anything else you want to say about that idea, or anything, or Jansports, or anything else?
I do have some thoughts coming on the food that we see on the spread, but I'll save that for when we get to the Creel Mansion.
Don't eat anything.
Well, I might surprise you with my take. Oh. I'll just tell you right now, here's my take. Mr. What's It, come kidnap me. Oh. This looked great.
Okay. First of all, put it on the merch. Mr. What's It, come kidnap me, put it on the merch, an all-timer Mallory take. Secondly, does it inform your adoration of the alt world, the Lotus Eater Machine world food, knowing that what you're actually eating is goop being force-fed to you from a fleshy tentacle that is attached to a pulsating sac that is attached to Vecna?
Listen, I try not to think about it.
That's what the Lotus Eaters want you to not think about it.
Vecna's pulsing flesh sac is, of course, always on our minds.
Sure.
From meat ring to pulsing flesh sac, the conversation evolves, but House of R remains the same.
Turns out it's a meat tube.
Isn't it always? Revisiting A Wrinkle in Time, which of course is once again central to the text today, the stretch on Camazotz where it's like, ooh, this delicious Thanksgiving dinner, and the variance across the character set, whether you're in a trance or you are free of that, of like, this is really great, and it tastes like sawdust. Is, of course, also on our minds here. But I thought, was it like maybe like a pineapple upside down cake in the back? Those cupcakes right in the foreground that had like the jelly fruit wedges, that really took me back to childhood. I thought this looked great. I know thyself. I know myself well enough. I'd like to think I'd be out there like Holly the Heroic, or out there like Delightful Derek, Detective Derek. No, I'd probably be like Mary and Thomas and the other kids, just like fistfuls of Turkish delight and macaroons and, ooh, what's on the TV now?
Yeah.
And, ooh, wait, are there some fits I could check out in these closets? However,
Yes.
I have some notes on the snack selection at the Squawk.
Interesting. Do you want to get into it right now as we're in snack corner? Here's my suspicion about the snacks at the Squawk. This
Tell
is
me.
all product placement. We felt it
You're
in
right.
part one with the boppers, like the boppers, which you can buy. I mean, no free ads, but we learned from our listeners you can still buy those. And
No
I'm
free ads,
sure,
but send us some, Nature Valley.
I'm sure there has been a massive uptick in boppers consumption since part one. Murray holding the Bugles box and basically cheesing at the camera while he did it. I hope he got paid a promotional fee for that product placement. But what did you want to say?
I hope so as well, but that's my note. Now, you can see a lot of good stuff in the box. Obviously, Erica is like inspired while downing a high C juice box. Great. We see some Pringles, wonderful. Some Chips Ahoy, great. Obviously, we have a Twinkie in there. I would definitely take the
Doritos.
Twinkie. Thank you, Joe. We'll see Lucas heating up the popcorn. We see some cheese puffs, some pretzels, some Planters peanuts. The bag of Doritos, which is like very central to the snack focus of season 5. It's right there, and we don't grab it. We grab the Bugles. I've never been a Bugle fan. I'm sorry. 2 of the snacks in my youth that I just never felt partial to, a Bugle and a Frito. Both felt like they burned my tongue a little bit. Now, maybe I wouldn't feel that way now when I basically just mainline sugar and salt 24/7 and have no idea how I'm alive. Perhaps now I would love a Bugle, but I didn't love them when I was a kid, and they were everywhere. Kids in my school would put them on their fingers and pretend like they were long nails. I assume this was a universal pastime. A Bugle, it was just never for me. So I'm like, of all these things, this is what Murray grabs, a Bugle? He's smuggling in all of these goodies. He managed to find a body glove wetsuit for Elle that Mike thought was incredibly impressive and memorable. But Bugles are the go-to. I'm sorry. It's not what I would have chosen.
I was trying, while you were talking about Bugles, while you were giving me that incredible Bugle rant, I was trying to remember, I think there's a character in like season 5 or 6 of Buffy who puts the Bugles on their finger and is a big Bugle fan, but I cannot confirm it while I'm simultaneously podcasting, so I will not say for certain, but everything comes back to Buffy. Here's my question.
Tell me.
There seems to be a clear snack divide.
Yeah.
In the Creole Mansion, it's Sugartown. And in the Squawk, it's Salty Crispy. Which one are you picking? If you can only pick one, Sugar Goopy or Salty Crispy, what's your poison?
So this is like the age-old question. You know me well enough.
A tale for our time.
It is. You know me well enough to know my preferred path, which is to constantly rotate between the two.
Hopefully it's almost in the same bite.
Yeah, like have a bowl of Doritos and then immediately follow it up with a nice a nice chocolate caramel or something.
Sure.
And then at night, I have my pint of ice cream and then maybe something salty after. I just love to snack. If I had to choose though, I would almost always pick salty over sweet.
I am every time Salty Crispy over sweet. That's what I would say. Okay. If you want, send us your snack thoughts. What are you snacking on this Christmas?
Sign it with your
holiday
snack.
Season. Sign it with your snack.
Sign it with your apple. Sign it with your pickle.
What would Henry Creel have to put in his mansion that would have you just happily chawing down and not worrying about any ominous monologues that he's giving about the darkness or, et cetera, et cetera? oppositedragons@gmail.com. Okay. At this point, you know what the release schedule is, but I'll just remind you, right? We have got one more episode to go after this 5 through 7 chunk that they've dropped here on the 25th of December, and that is the finale, which airs on New Year's Eve. Episode 8.
Yeah.
surely a chunky episode. They're also putting it in theaters, so
Yes.
they're
Movie
really
life.
eventizing it, a real sort of like movie type experience.
You gonna try to see it in theaters or TBD based on various factors?
Yeah, kind of depends. If it will benefit us to watch it like as soon as possible, you know what I mean? Like, let's talk about it. Something to know about the timing. Episodes 5 and 6 are set on the remainder of the night of November 5th or the early hours of the morning of November 6th. It's still dark outside. Into November 6th, right? I think we missed a day when we were counting last time. But Derek shows up at the Maxi on the 5th. And so then we're like into the night of the 5th. That's what happens with like the massacre at the Maxi and stuff like that. And then now we're in sort of the wee small hours when Erica says when she gets to Mr. Clark's house, it's 5 a.m. It's 5 a.m. on the 6th when Erica gets to Mr. Clark's house. So everything that happens before that is either the night of the 5th or into the morning of the 6th.
And we get inside of chapter 6, so not chapter 5, chapter 6, we get a very dramatic chiming of the Vecna clock and then a November 6th word mark to really ensure that we know that we are on this key day that Lucas has been telling us is not only the beginning, but is also the end.
It's also there.
There we are.
Mallory, we haven't really talked about this because, we didn't do our usual sort of like back and forth. So I actually don't know. How do you feel about season 5 so far? Is this middle section, does it feel typical or atypical of Stranger Things? Because even though we've had a divided season in season 4, we've never had like sort of a middle chunk taken out and just sort of delivered us without like a big sort of finale kind of moment. So how are you feeling about this? How does this middle section feel? Does this like rollout feel right to you? How are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, obviously like seasons 1 through 3 were binges, and then season 4 we had the 2-part drop.
Yeah.
So this is you're right. It's distinct. I'm still glad that we're getting multiple drops so that we have multiple moments to watch and share together and discuss together and speculate and theorize together, both, us here on the pod and just in general fans. I think that's vastly preferable to an alternate reality where this had dropped all at once. In terms of like that idea of a middle section, that's a good question. I guess without saying anything about episode 7, obviously, and just sticking to 5 and 6 here, I enjoyed episode 6 quite a bit. I do have some of the same notes that I think you have, and I think that there are plenty of things to talk through about some of the choices the characters are making, but I did find the episode compelling in terms of like the blend of emotional character moments and certain key duos and sections of the story melded with plot. I think overall I'm having fun with the season and enjoying the season quite a bit. I am as curious here in volume 2 and maybe more curious here in volume 2 than I was in volume 1 about like balance across the season and pace across the season. So I will reserve final judgment until, we see the finale and see how we conclude things. But I would say like overall, we have gotten a number of moments with characters I care deeply about that have moved me to tears. And so like, I think already, who knows how it ends, but already I feel like we've gotten enough stuff in this season that like will stand the test of time and really impactful, lasting memories about the Stranger Things story and the Stranger Things characters. I do wonder about a couple things. One, and this is not specific to Stranger Things, it is often the case in a story where mythology and lore is very central to our understanding of events. I'm curious to see, I guess, how that all lands and feels at the end. We obviously got a couple big updates inside of the 2 episodes that we're going to talk about today, but it is less to me so far about whether each of those individual reveals exotic matter. It's actually a wormhole in there. Though obviously we'll talk about those things. It's less so far about whether those are like totally effective and more like I feel how many answers the season thinks it needs to provide, right? And go ahead.
Well, I would say I agree with you.
Yeah.
I feel like my main critique of what I feel like there are 2 things I think are sort of sludging down the season a little bit. One, I would say high highs. Like,
yes, very
these
high
big
highs.
Emotional moments are kind of surrounded by things that I'm confused by and that sort of stuff. But then like the emotion hits and I am swept away. So I'm not negative on the season as a whole, but I think that, again, not to reference everything to Buffy, but the final season of Buffy really had this problem where there's just like a lot of like, here's the plan, someone gives a speech moment. So a lot of those moments I think are sort of like grinding everything to a halt a little bit. But what's clear is that they're trying to like, obviously trying to explain things to the audience so the audience doesn't feel lost. But I think and this might be the sort of Netflix second screen thing, but I think they're underestimating the audience a little bit in terms of like how they're over-explaining certain things.
Yeah.
And then there's so many characters. Like there's so many characters. And this is always, this has been increasingly true of Stranger Things, but we're having all the characters we've had before, and then we're adding in like Mr. Clark or Vicky or whatever, there's just like, or Kali, and there's just even more to keep track of. And divvying up the groups is one way to make it feel manageable, but then you're like tracking a bunch of different sort of quests around various locations and stuff like that. So it's just like the End of Thrones, it feels massive, it feels high stakes, it feels, I think Thrones also had this problem, and I think it's like a real reactive to the final season of Lost. Whenever a finale of a massively popular show looms, the creators always think about Lost, a finale that you and I love.
Yeah.
But an accusation that was hurled at that show was like, they never answered any questions. So then I feel like there becomes this impulse of like, we have to answer everything and make it so clear so that no one can get on Reddit and be like, they never explained this, And so I understand that impulse, but I think it can just like get kind of sludgy, here at the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel, or that's my, I guess, concern. And I think it's related to the other point that you were making about the characters and just like pace, because of this just time span of a few days that the final season is operating inside of. And this real, not just the Vecna ticking clock and the questions of Ben theories about time travel, but this real ticking clock of like, the end is here and we know it and the characters keep saying it. And so there's an interesting bit of dissonance. I think this really relates to what you were saying about the number of characters, where something I'm feeling is that it feels like a ton is being crammed into just a few days in a way that's, I don't know, even though the seasons have always been active and there's a key moment, Halloween or July 4th, where events are unfolding, it's like there's a lot going on inside of just a few days here. But at the same time, because of the character spread and the number of different people who we have to have meaningful time with at the end, or we hope to have meaningful time with at the end, there's a little bit of a reduction inside of the sheer heft that needs to be accomplished of, this is the person you're going to be with and this is the thing you guys are going to talk about over and over again. So does it make sense to me that here at the end, Dustin and Steve, who've always been in a certain place, have variance inside of their relationship that is born out of the trauma they have both suffered through? Yes. Is it also true that it is slightly painful for every scene that they've been in together until a breakthrough, which I'm excited to talk about today, has felt the same? Yeah. Does it make sense to me completely that here at the end, Hopper and Elle and Joyce and Will, that a lot of what is happening with those characters would orient around the trust or almost impossible to suppress desire to protect the person you love most in this world dynamic, and the need to empower your child with a level of trust that inherently puts you in a position of fearing the thing you fear most in the world. Yeah, that feels right. But it is still also true that all of the conversations that those sets of characters have had have oriented around that same idea. So it's this weird mix of like, it feels like we have so much to do. So many, we're at the final season of a genre show, mythology questions to answer, but also a little too much repetition inside of each character set. That doesn't mean that's how I'll feel about it after the finale. I think that it's completely possible that won't be the case. But this was the volume, and I think that gets to your middle volume question. I felt it inside of these episodes a little bit, even though I did quite enjoy episode 6.
And I just think that some of it is like, in some cases, it's just like extraordinarily successful. And in some cases, it's just not quite clicking the way that I wanted to. So to get to our next, one in the stretch of season 5 feels most representative of what Stranger Things is/does, which is usually just like, what's your favorite scene, kind of, is basically what we usually end up picking here. The Jonathan and Nancy scene, which like every cast person in an interview said, there's a Jonathan and Nancy scene that I love, which made me worry that like one of them was going to die or something like that.
Yeah.
Instead, we get this other, I thought, completely surprising moment inside of a relationship that I've had trouble caring about, inside of characters that sometimes have not been like the core of my focus and stuff like that. Extraordinarily successful. Just like maybe one of my favorite scenes in all of Stranger Things ever. I just, and
Yes.
and I will say, especially when people tell me, oh, there's this one scene with Jonathan and Nancy that's amazing, my skepticism is so
Sure,
up.
of
I'm like,
course.
you're not
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
get me. I'm not going to have the basic bitch answer, but I do, because this is the answer. So when you take this Jonathan and Nancy tension, which was building since last season, right? Since their separation in season 4, their uneasy reunion at the end of season 4, we were curious sort of like how that was going to play out. The way that it is built up and this, and then the way it comes to a head, and just like this, they just really gave this gift to these actors to have this scene. Natalia and Charlie did a really, really good job with this unproposal sort of moment. Really, really good.
Yeah.
When you compare that to something like what has been happening with Dustin and Steve all season, leading up to a similar, like supposed to be, I think, similarly emotional catharsis, it was just not nearly as successful for Dustin and Steve. I think Dustin, I'm willing to go with it because he's a teenager, and he's watched Eddie die in his arms. But I think they had to make Steve behave too far out of character in order to sort of force this acrimony into this tearful reunion. And like, we all knew that this reunion was going to happen, and I should have been like prostrate on the floor with like relief or happiness or tears or whatever, because when like Gaten is so good in that scene and Joe is like quite good in that scene, but I was just like, this all felt like incorrect leading up to something that didn't feel really as earned as I wanted it to, especially in such close proximity, both physically, plotline, time-wise in the episode, to the Jonathan and Nancy sort of like exquisite chef's kiss moment. So, that's just sort of like, sometimes it's working for me. It feels like they want to give everyone something like, obviously something big to do here at the end. And sometimes it's hitting and sometimes it's not. And that's just, that's just life, man. What do you think, Valerie?
Yeah, I think that I am a little higher on the Dustin Steve literal knockdown, the knockout drag down fight than you are. Though I agree with there is something like a pit in my gut watching the way that Steve behaved in this episode, and I can talk myself into why, but I'm not challenging your note there, which I think is completely valid. But the issue that the struggle that I had was more like they can't walk up half a staircase without saying something cruel to each other. The kind of like ceaseless nature of the snide insult and remark. Very funny to like stay here and play with your balls, but other than that, it's like just actually kind of really mean,
like unpleasant to watch.
Yeah, it started to feel unpleasant to watch. Exactly, from characters who, and I don't. That's not the same as me saying I think that they should just always be making lightsaber sounds and dicking around with each other at ice cream parlors. I think the fact that people in a relationship that spans formative years of youth, where these terribly traumatic things are happening, go through some shit with each other actually makes sense and is an interesting creative choice. When they broke completely and are rolling around the rainbow room and got to that point, and then when we hear what Dustin says, which we'll talk about more, I was pretty affected by that, and it felt to me like where I kind of wanted the bickering to go all season, which was to that place that we just actually talked about quite a bit on our best fights of the century so far pod. It had that quality for me of like, you can hurt the person you love the most because you know how. It did give me that, and so I liked it. And then the stairwell, like, I can't lose you, not you. That actually did break me, and I was like crying.
I mean,
and that was
so good.
Just really, yeah. But and I think some other character sets delivered very. We'll talk about everything with Max and Holly in great detail, but some of what Max said at the very end to Holly, I have some notes on Max's strategy and plans throughout timing Amazon's escape. Many notes.
BT Dubs, you can't come with me.
I have some notes. We have some notes on that. But But
Holly the
like, you
heroic,
saved me, and
Yeah.
this is in you already was so core
I agree.
to the Stranger Things experience. I love
really
that. Even something subtler like Mike and Elle and the conversation they had, and Mike really delivered a thing that I love of like, why does someone else get to decide for us? You know, like there were little moments throughout that I'm excited to talk about that I enjoyed. All of that said, though, obviously my pick is the same as yours because I agree. I thought that the Nancy Jonathan scene was one of the best pieces of acting, writing, and emotion that we have seen in the show, and it feels like the perfect embodiment of the thing that we have talked about across not just the season 5 episodes, but the rewatch. It's not a common thing anymore to get to spend a decade of your life watching characters grow up with each other, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm so excited to go through that scene in more detail, but I really agree with everything you said. I just thought it was beautiful, and it felt so honest and, like, a really well-earned and rewarding thing to see between two people who, like, have made their way to each other and then grown apart, but that doesn't mean they don't love each other, and that's actually a lot harder to navigate than just like, I don't like you anymore. I just thought it was
Or like,
great.
I'd rather be with Steve. Like, you know,
Yes,
like the fact that wasn't what the answer was.
Yeah, that felt perfect. I love that.
really
That after
great.
all our ship wars, it was like, it's actually not about Steve at all. Like, it's about
Nancy,
me. It was great.
Kelly Taylor choosing herself. This is very important. A very important 90210 moment for Nancy Wheeler here. I was thinking about, again, we will go into more detail about this, but I was thinking a lot about Natalia and Charlie Heaton and Natalia Dyer, who started dating in season 1, have been together since season 1, you know, like live together when they're, you know, like, you know, but got together so young, and you know, when Jonathan talks about their trauma bonds, you know, essentially, and it's like, who else could understand what we've been through?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's just true of these young actors who have been together in Stranger Things, and who else could possibly understand it? But in what ways is that, you know, I'm not saying that they put Natalia and Charlie's like real relationship in here, but there are just like truths that are you know, true about this experience that these actors have gone through together in shooting up into rapid overnight stardom.
Yeah.
That no one else could understand what they went through. And that's not to say that like Natalia and Charlie find that suffocating, but like there is just these like elements of, we're so young and I don't know what I want, and why should I, like, how could I possibly decide? And this is something that I'm so glad you brought up in the last chunk of episodes that you talked about, when we talked about like the couples coming out of this. You're like, somebody has to break up, because not all of these couples can have met each other when they were children and stay together. That's just not realistic. And so for them to give us that inside of this moment, this sort of life or death, the walls are gooping in moment, was extraordinarily good television.
It was great.
I feel really lucky to have watched it. Okay. Again, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail when we get there, but just last but not least, I'm just going to keep coming back to this. I stripped out the like movie references because I think we have addressed all that, but I just want to remind that the finales the Duffers has cited as inspirations are 6 Feet Under, Breaking Bad, Friday Night Lights. So 3 bangers, just something I think about as we go forward. A lot of those have to do with like time and bittersweetness. I would say are sort of 2 things, like epilogues, and also just sort of like not everyone gets a happy ending. Interesting, something to think about. Okay, this episode is brought to you by Target. Heads up, Stranger Things has
Never to overspend from subscription. You can even automatically .com/The Ringer. That is skip the crowds and order online for pickup.
We put a pin in something and then come back to it. Obviously, there are certain stretches where the episodes intercut, but yes, broadly, I think clustering by location and or character set is kind of the only way to do it. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of like, and they found a door. Next scene.
Next
and
scene,
then they went through the door. We move very rapidly in and out of sequences. So yes, I think this is an appropriate way to structure it for sure.
We're starting with episode 5. Shock Jock.
Yes.
Sadly, we are not getting the disc jockey literal moment that we wanted, but
deprived. You know,
we're shocking a Demogorgon.
So, Joe, once again, I feel bad for the Demogorgon. I do.
Honestly, absolutely, I did.
Horrifying.
This is the first time I felt bad for the Demogorgon, and also I will say, when Lucas put forth his plan, like I love this moment when the Sinclair siblings are like, we have competing plans. When Lucas put forth his plan, I was just like, simply no.
Very reckless.
You tried so hard it was so hard to kill those Demogorgons.
Yeah.
And it is your idea is to resurrect one?
Yeah. Don't reanimate the death machine.
What are we doing? I mean, it kind of worked out for them, I guess, but I was just like, absolutely not. Anyway, we pick up exactly where we left off. We've got Will, Joyce, Mike, and then eventually Lucas in the aftermath of the attack.
Yes.
We've got, Joyce's reaction, Mike's reaction, his like gleeful run towards Will, his excitement, and a real life, honest to good sorcerer.
Yep.
Something I thought was interesting upon like rewatch is comparing how Will talked about his if I just figured this out sooner, if I just acted sooner, I could have saved these kids. How close that is to Holly's specific source of shame. I was paralyzed. I didn't do anything. I couldn't save my mom. I couldn't save you, Max. When you were being like strangled, I'm useless. I didn't do anything. And so this ties into something we've been talking about for 2 seasons now with Vecna, which is like this shame aspect, right? Of how Vecna plays upon your shame, but like how vulnerable everyone, that Joyce talked about her shame of like, I didn't realize that my son was missing, or Hopper talked about his shame as it relates to the war, as it relates to his daughter and all that sort of stuff like that. So this is just like, this is in all of us. It is ready at any moment to come forth, and Vecna, it's his favorite thing to play with when it comes to this. But I thought it was really interesting that like for both Holly and Will, I don't think accidentally, it was like a very similar strain of shame and self-recrimination inside of quite heroic actions from these characters.
This is, I love this observation, and I agree that this feels very consistent with how we have like tracked and come to understand the way that Vecna seeks to make you feel ashamed or insignificant, insufficient, and like prey on your insecurities and vulnerabilities. What I really love about it is that last thing you said. Like, I really like these moments in fandom and receiving a story where you're reading a book and you pause after something just astonishing happens in a chapter, or you watch one episode or a movie, whatever the case may be, and the individual and then the collective response is like celebration for some sort of accomplishment and achievement, even if the situation is dire. And then we get to the next beat and the character in question is not in that headspace. They're like, oh no, either I didn't do enough, I should have done better, or okay, I did this cool thing, but
now what?
It's not. This isn't like a perfect comp, but it reminds me a little. I think one of my favorite examples of this. We just talked about Hard Home, so maybe that's why it's top of mind for me. And obviously, when the Night King raises his arms at Hard Home, it's like pretty clearly a dire, drastic moment. There's no other way to read it. However, one of the things I think undeniably that also happened after watching Hard Home is you're like, John killed a White Walker, like Valerian Steel. We have all, like it's sick, it's awesome, but also like we know we have new information. We have, and it's like there is a state of despair that we then return to about the challenge that awaits. And so I really liked this. I like that everybody spent the last month basically between Thanksgiving and Christmas rightly being like, we just watched something that was really fucking awesome when Will became the sorcerer and wiped that blood away. It's amazing. And then we get to Will and he's like, I mean, this wasn't enough, which like isn't really a fair burden to put on him, but does feel very human, and certainly where how these characters would be navigating what awaits. So I liked that quite a bit.
When they find Lucas in the tunnel and he's got, a wound on his chest, and I just thought, this moment was really funny. They're like trying to like underreact to this like gaping wound. Flesh wound. Clearly a flesh wound. Absolutely fine.
Joanna, every single person who's been slashed by a demo, a lot of people checking in. No one's checking on Ted. Can people give less of a shit about Ted Wheeler?
Couldn't possibly give fewer fucks. Karen gets to play hero inside of this episode.
Yeah.
Ted, we don't even know or care. Nobody cares.
Is Ted alive still?
We don't know. The electricity was fluctuating in the hospital, as that soldier snidely said. Tough for Granny. Like, what about Ted Wheeler?
Can we
I
get
sent
a
you-
pan of Ted? Proof of life, please?
I told you that I was watching like a Nell Fisher interview where she was talking about, someone was asking her about like her family on the show, and they were like, you know, working with Natalia and working with Finn and working with Kara, and she was like, and Joe who plays Ted, like, you know, he's great, he's so funny. And then I also sent you this morning like a Ted Wheeler, last night a Ted Wheeler like,
Yes, you sent it to me at 2
cut.
a.m.
Oh, 2 a.m.
You sent it to me at 1:43 a.m.
A really normal time to be doing anything. I sent you a Ted Wheeler edit on Instagram.
And I received it with glee in my heart.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Joyce,
Yes.
here in the tunnel section, has this idea for Will to attack Vecna. And she's very much embracing her, like, I underestimated you. I coddled you. You're powerful. Let me encourage you. She will later blame herself for that when her conversation with Hop. But in this moment when she calls him extraordinary, when she talks to him about Vecna underestimating him, that's not a mistake that she will make, all this sort of stuff like that.
Yeah.
What did this make you think of Mallory, and how did you feel about it?
You know, has Tom Riddle picked up the tale of three brothers? No. It's again, once again, the comp there I think is pretty apparent and difficult to ignore. I really liked Joyce's shift from I'm so afraid, I'm consumed by guilt, and so that only amplifies and heightens my fear and my need to like coddle out of an instinct to protect, to like, it is a big shift, I will say, but I like that it is like an active embrace of Will's ability. I thought that was cool, and I really thought that end note of like, that's a mistake I'll never ever make again, but I'm willing to bet everything that he does, was a great way to sum up to hit on that trope, a recurring beat across stories, the villain who underestimates someone or something that is crucial to why our heroes will ultimately prevail.
Right.
And not only that, but in Vecna's case, it's more active. It's like he acknowledges these things. So it's not like he's like oblivious, like I didn't read this children's story because it's beneath me. He's like, I'm picking you because I think you're weak.
Yeah.
And so he's seeing something that he thinks is a limitation, and our characters can celebrate that and champion it and turn it into or recognize that it is a strength. That's great.
And
like,
even when he later then has Will captive in the library inside of his mind palace, he's like, that's my power inside of me. You think you did something? That's my power. And like, is still not treating Will like the threat that he is, you know what I mean? Like, cannot see beyond. Totally. Because there is, of course, and Will acknowledges this, like, ways in which he is siphoning power.
Yes.
This debate about what's a wizard, what's a sorcerer, all the sort of stuff like that. But like, but also, as should always be the case with these stories, there's just like the very human connection, human community, human rooting in what matters inside of our world that's worth saving. Whereas Henry / Vecna / one wants to remake the world, right?
Yes.
It seems that what is it about the Shire, Hawkins, that, you know, is so worth defending, is something that he does not seem to have access to. I don't know, again, if Henry will emerge from somewhere inside of the veiny recesses of Vecna to come through at some point, but I just think that's kind of endlessly fascinating to me. What are you missing about the human experience, or you know, what makes a hobbit a threat, or something like that at the end of the day? So,
absolutely. I love that. I thought also both in that Will Vecna moment that you just identified, that they're my powers, and also just in this opening stretch of like basically catching Lucas up. I thought that this fifth episode, this sixth episode, did a good job of just kind of establishing the rules of how Will is doing this and what maybe the opportunities are in that, but also what the limits are. And then, you know, we've had a lot of the discussion, and since we covered season 4 for the first time, and then revisiting it, and now uncovering season 5, where we're like, what awaits for Elle and Will and everyone? And I think obviously the Elle part of that is just the center text for Elle in these episodes, with everything that Kali and Hop and Eleven and Mike are parsing about the blood transfusions. But with Will, it's like, okay, we have this insight. I obviously agree with everything you're saying about the core of your power inside of you. And we get another really great reinforcement to your Holly Will comp point, your larger one there. Like, that's the heart of what Max will say to Holly, and that, of course, then just connects back to what we already saw with Will and heard from Robin. It's like these beats and parallels occur across the character sets that you have what you need inside of you, just as like Meg does in Wrinkle of Time, right?
Just as Dorothy does. It was inside of you all along.
It's eternal. This is eternal. It's a thing we love to see in our stories. That's paired with, okay, literally, if you're trying to tap into the hive mind, how is it going to work? And it's kind of important for us to understand all of those things in concert, right? And so then you have this question of like, well, if there is, what does that mean given that we have like a success here, but then a failure, right? We take a step forward and then we have a setback when Will is...
I would say a lot of failures for our characters. And again, this is like, this is the danger of the middle section, right?
Yes.
You have to fail before you succeed.
Of course, right.
But like, we are making a lot of incorrect assumptions and plans that don't work out and stuff like that inside of this section, which I think can be like a little hard, especially on the rewatch. To watch someone like elaborately lay out a plan that is not gonna go the way you think it is like harder to watch. I watched this episode I think like 3 times. It's like sort of harder to watch on the 3rd time through or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
I think definitely. I think looking ahead to the impending 3rd volume, which again we have not seen and have no idea if we will be able to see before everyone else in the world sees it. I'm wondering, like with Will and the setback here, with Vecna ending up like ensnaring Will in a trance again. It makes me wonder, like, okay, is the show priming us for basically a comp to what the conversation that Max and Holly have at the end of episode 6, which is like, okay, Holly has to confront again what happened with Karen and the demo in the kitchen, and she's like, I just stood there. And then there's a chance with Max and Vecna, and she's like, fuck, I just stood there again. Now, Max, of course, is like, well, knew Holly wouldn't do that. I probably would have been like, you're like a very small child, and that seems super scary.
What are you gonna do?
Take it easy on yourself. And she gets there eventually, but not immediately.
We had the exact same reaction when she was like, you wouldn't do that now. I was like, nor should you have done it then because you are a small child, but okay.
Yes. But then so we're building with Holly toward this, like, Max and Holly are standing there. I can't wait for us to get to Max. We're looking at Lucas holding Max, and Max is like, by the way, you can't come. We've got a lot to discuss there.
Come
we have a lot to discuss there. But we build through that conversation and the heroic embrace to Holly opening her own portal. It's there for her. She turns, right? And then they are both like moving and the episode ends. So we built toward, I observe a thing that I didn't think I did well enough. Then I had another opportunity and I didn't do it again. And then my chance comes again. So like, what are we setting up with the Will Vecna of it all, and how does that balance, of course, with the L Vecna of it all?
I think also, I mean, I know we said we weren't doing Theory Corner in this episode, but I think like watching Holly trace back through her own experience with her mom, is there an opportunity for Will to revisit little baby Will? And sort of, whether, we had talked about this idea of time traveling back, but if it's not time traveling and it's more just like memory hopping, which is a time travel of its own kind. We're all time travelers if you think about it, Mallory. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but like the opportunity for Will to see his smaller self and whatever he blames himself for, to see how small he was when that happened to him originally in November 6th. Similar to what 11 went through in her sort of regression memory work in season 4. Okay. Meanwhile, in Camazotz, the jarring violence of the kids being goop fed is like so upsetting.
Absolutely, legitimately, like horrifying.
And then the absolute whiplash of the idyllic Lotus Eater machine tranquility of Derek et al. Waking up in a sun-dappled field. As Henry's like, you might not remember how you got here. It was scary, but don't worry about it. Henry here talking to them all about the evil darkness. And says, like, Meg, you are special, right? Henry read literally one book and is just, like, using it to ensorcell all of these children, right? But this is how he talked to 11, right? When he was, like, grooming 11, he was like, you're special. There's power within you. We can access it, right? And thinking about when we travel through Holly's memories and we see Henry outside the window during the slumber party, Henry in the library
So
coming out of the
creepy.
shadows, Henry at the playground, which we had already seen him there, but we see him there again. It's just like so pedophile, groomer, stalker, absolute blueprint that they're obviously trying to underline this, but just sort of like this language here as he's weaving his spell around the children. We saw it work with Holly. We saw Holly sort of break out of it thanks to Max. We see that Derek is being held hostage by something else, by like a threat. But how much do you think that Henry or Vecna or whoever's driving the bus at this given moment believes in the evil darkness that he's talking about, this pitch that he gives them here about the world and its threat, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this, obviously the thing that this brings top of mind is the big speech that we heard one give to 11 in season 4 in episode 7. The spider speech, the I can just make my own world speech. And so I think, my read on Henry's plan, both what he stated to Elle back in 79 and what he is working to accomplish with these vessels here, is that when he says, this is your sanctuary, he knows simultaneously that they are pawns and tools, and also that he has enough of a warped mind that he believes his own bullshit, right? What did he say to 11 in season 4? Everyone is just waiting for it all to be over, all while performing in a silly, terrible play day after day. I could not do that. I could not close off my mind and join in the madness. I could not pretend, and I realized I didn't have to. I could make my own rules. I could restore balance to a broken world. A predator, to your point from a second ago, and he's talking about the spider comp, but also what you described is notable here and applicable, but for good. So he is inverting what he thinks is the light is the darkness. He doesn't believe we heard what he said about his own parents, the kind of structure of society and rhythm of a shared life.
He thinks Hawkins is, as it exists, is corrupt.
He thinks humanity is corrupt.
It's a disease, as Agent Smith would say. But right, or men are weak, as Elrond would say. Whatever your preferred Hugo Weaving role. But But my question is, do you think the world he wants to remake, is it fleshy, wall, force-fed goop town, or is it this idyllic 1950s heart and soul on the piano paradise? Does he want to bring everyone on Earth into an old, hook you up and we're all going to stay in this Lotus Eater machine paradise space? Or is demogorgons and goopiness and all that sort of stuff like that, vines everywhere, blah, blah, is that his idea of paradise?
I think the latter. Okay. I think that the way that he described what he found in that existence, what we heard him say in season 4 about what he saw there, and the way that it made him realize that there was a different possibility for the way a world could function, that this idea of the spider-like, godlike predator for good, I don't think he has any interest in maintaining the fiction of the Creole mansion dessert buffet for a wider group of people.
He's got
to keep those kids calm so that he can use them as his vessels and enact his plan so that he can bring about a domain of his design that he leads, that is crafted in his image to his liking. And so how can that be anything but dark, even if it feels light to him? I thought that on the language front too, the other thing that really struck me in this sequence was the way that he said to him, you, pause, repeat, you, we get the W, you will be heroes, which...
Just for one day.
To bastard, to invoke, obviously deliberately on the screenwriting part here, the musical note we've heard more often than any other, maybe other than, the Hoppers, Jim song, to invoke that language that's going to make us think about one of the anthems of the series. And bastardize the we can be heroes lyric that has been something at the heart of watching our young kids grow up and fight off and thwart evil, is I think a really like fun for full circle way that's like really it roots us smartly, I think, in the different perspective, right? And so like it's a way to say to us, he believes his own bullshit, but undeniably that's bad.
Interesting.
What do you think?
I don't know. I'm curious if there's like some other layer here. I don't know. And I'm always curious like who exactly is driving the bus at any given moment. And is it always the same person?
Sure.
And is one part of him, because he's this fractured identity.
Mm-hmm.
Does Henry have an idea that's different from Vecna's idea? Has Vecna fooled Henry into thinking their ideas are the same idea? Like, I genuinely don't know. And maybe it's just simpler than that. And it's just like, I want the Spider-Verse, to be the new reality. I want, everyone drinking goop, like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious if it's more complex than that, but maybe it's just simpler than that. I mean, we only have like, after what you and I have watched, we only have one more episode to go, and even if it's a supersized episode, like I don't know how much time we really feel like we have left.
2+ hours, for a finale is like not nothing, but I think I do think that there will be. I do think clearly the show is pointing us toward complexity in Henry's backstory. Like obviously we get in these episodes the memory down in the mine shaft in the cave, and that line from Holly about like,
this is what made Henry bad,
and like introducing or reintroducing really that question of how much empathy should we have for the boy who became this thing and who was part of also what obviously reminding us of everything with the blood and with Elle, which we'll talk about, is like that Henry was a lab rat of Papa's too, and so that takes us back to the empathy that 11 had for him in season 4. And so I don't dispute that that's present here. I think it is.
No, I don't.
I think where we find the character now is that the scale has tipped too far into like, my utopia is not a haven for anyone else.
Yeah. I guess I feel like I don't want to close my mind or heart to the possibility that there is like some double talk going on here, but I don't. I'm
very open
answer.
to it.
Yeah.
I am wondering how like much time we have, but obviously there are clearly there are things that will be revealed about Henry in the very end of this series. That's obvious at this point, and so I do think that it's very possible that we get a like opening of the heart and opening of the mind for how he got to that point. I think frankly
like
we should.
Would you say the heart and soul?
The heart and soul.
Can I just say?
Yeah.
Few things. Like, there's occasionally Stranger Things will be like, here's a thing you did in the 1980s.
Oh, yeah.
And this might just be like any decade experience, but I feel like I don't hear kids plunking out heart and soul on the piano as much as I did when I was a kid, and I definitely know how to play like 3 things on the piano. And
this is the only one I ever learned.
This is the one I mastered, like better than chopsticks. I definitely heart and soul. So
I used to play it at my cousin's house in Long Island.
Where did you prefer to play the top or the like da 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 or the like da da da? You like da da da? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
because I was just I don't know how to play the piano, so that felt a little easier.
Well, that's why I like the other one, because like you can just trick yourself into thinking, because you're playing chords essentially. Yeah. But it's super easy. So you're like, look at me, I'm playing chords, and not really. Okay. Anyway. Holly, I don't know if we need to get into it too much here because we're going to talk about her so much later, but like Holly is even more of a main character than we even I think previously thought. She's so central to these 2 episodes, and we'll see going forward, but like it's just as much Holly's story as it is anyone else's, and that's a little surprising to me. I'm not like upset about it. I think Nell's really good. I think she's really good as Holly. Her American accent is very good, except for when she says Derek is like a word she has a problem with, but most of the time she's absolutely crushing it. But I think inside of a season of television, when we have all these favorites that we're like wanting to spend time with, occasionally it's a little hard for me to like, see how much real estate is going to Holly. Do you know what I mean?
All right, we are going to need to wrap up our first part of 3 of today's flight. here on Saturday, December 27th. It is 12:39 Eastern Time right now. We are going to pause for the first video. We'll have 2 more installments that will come throughout the week as we finish that podcast, The House of R, with Joanna Robinson and Mallory Rubin. Great podcast. Check it out if you like genre nerdy shows like I do. As I'm recording this, Clemson is playing Penn State in the Pinstripe Bowl. Penn State's up 3-0. And I've got 20 seconds left, so I will sign out from here, and we will rejoin you from the exact same spot. The video will be posted in just a few days. So until then, signing out from above the Bahamas.